Everybody knows that gas stations like to gouge people on holidays, in tourist destinations, and basically wherever they can get away with it. Well, the mayor of the small Kentucky town of Somerset decided he'd do something about it. The residents of Somerset consistently complained for years about gas prices in their town that were estimated to be about 20 to 30 cents higher than in the other surrounding cities. Mayor Eddie Girdler, fed up with the price gouging, decided to make an investment into the city and use $75,000 of taxpayer money to build its own city-controlled gas station. According to the Associated Press, Somerset Fuel Center, shortly after completion, was hit with consumers when it opened on a Saturday. It served 75 customers in the first 3 hours and has been averaging about 300 Phillips a day ever since. Now, this is a small town, and they're getting hit with business from all over. Now, the whole goal of this was to enforce competition to get those other stations to lower the prices. And so far, it seems to have worked. Not only that, but the operation has pretty much broken even in costs. This gas station doesn't have snacks or amenities like some of the others, but it is cheaper, and that's a major draw for those who just want to get gas. And a lot of the residents who are around the area love this idea. The business community, however, the business community isn't happy with the new competition. They're throwing a fit and calling it socialism. One convenience store owner complained that they've used the taxpayer money that I have paid them over these years to do this, to be against us. I do not see how that they can't see that as socialism. I don't think this is socialism at all. It's a government option. The government isn't taking over the gas station and eliminating competition. It's doing the opposite. It's actually offering gas at a more competitive price in order to bring down the inflated costs of the other gas stations. Which, by the way, those other gas stations, they still offer more in frills, amenities, snacks, all that good stuff, so you could certainly go there for more service. And by the way, this is a hint to you guys. Use that as an advantage. You're supposed to be competitive, remember? They haven't had competition in so long, I bet they forgot how to compete. Anyway, Mayor Girdler, who's one of my new favorite mayors, told the Kentucky Petroleum Marketers Association that he is not backing down after it warned people not to follow Somerset's lead. Oh, imagine that, entrenched oil interests getting mad at the idea of more competition. Boo fucking who? The mayor said, quote, "We are one community that decided we've got backbone, and we're not going to allow the oil companies to dictate to us what we can and cannot do. We're going to start out small. Where it goes from here, we really don't know." So, what do you think about this?
Hate it.
I figured you would hate competition.
I don't hate competition, but it's really not fair. Like you were saying that the gas station is breaking even. Like, no privately owned gas station can function for you. He's breaking even and not turning a profit. Like you have to like pay people, pay yourselves. Like it's kind of like it's a nice little burn if you feel like you're being gouged by the gas station, by the gas companies, but like you're putting people out of work because you have an artificial advantage because you're the government. And keep it real, even if this starts losing money, people will vote to keep it because it's a cheaper option, even if it's subsidized gasoline. So,
okay, for one, it's the city government, by the way. It is the city government. It's the city government, by the way. So it's nice and local, which is what tends to be a more conservative idea.
I want to point out this: the reason they're crying socialism is because it's socialism. But the reason they're upset about it is because it's an example of socialism working. And I want to kind of tie this to be the meta guy here and tie this in to the greater context of what we've dealt with in America for the past 2 years. This is a beautiful example of a public option working and fixing a real issue without betraying our American principles and love of capitalism and working and being able to make as much money as you want. And so what happens here is these gas stations got together and colluded illegally to jack up prices, and so the government stepped in and fixed an actual issue. The government didn't create an issue. The government stepped in to fix an issue, and it did it on the local scale. So I do want to point out one thing here. Whenever you hear conservatives gripe about like how the government hurts them, the federal government hurts them, it should be a state issue until the state government hurts them. Then they say the state government's hurting us. This should be a local issue until the local government does it. And then they say what they're saying is, give me the control to do whatever I want and screw as many people over as I want. That's human nature, right? These local gas station owners are probably not billionaires, but it's that human nature gets a lot more dangerous whenever you have billionaires who have tons of power doing it. But so what you've got here is, if as long as it stays revenue neutral and it's not losing the taxpayers' money, I'm fine with it, because it gives you two options. You've got nice gas stations that are probably prettier and a better place to go in. Maybe you take your kids or whatever, go get a snack, get a icy or whatever. They've got all the frills. They maybe have got a restaurant in them, like the one whose parking lot I'm in right now. You've got that, and if you want to spend a little extra money for that experience, you go do that, and that's what they have to offer over the public option. Then you've got this no-frills public option that's just selling gas. It's not worried about making a revenue. It's not as pretty. It doesn't have as much to offer, but it provides the service that people need at a price they're more likely to afford. And this was the one time in maybe his entire first term, certainly the healthcare debate, that President Obama stood up and called out Republicans for their crap, and it worked brilliantly. I mean, literally, the next day, this stopped. But one of the early arguments against the public option and all this kind of stuff, before we realized that President Obama really didn't care about getting that, it was Republicans were like, yeah, the government can't do anything right. The government can't do anything right. This will be horrible. And then, in the same breath, they'd turn around and say, man, there's no way we can compete with this. This is going to be unfair. This is going to be so much more efficient. And President Obama called them out on that. You can't come in the same conversation and say the government can't do anything right and the government's going to do this too well. And as soon as he said that, they stopped throwing those 2 points. They dropped the whole, this is going to be too efficient and we won't be able to compete with it. And they stuck with one narrative that the government can't do anything right. And this is a perfect example of that hypocrisy here, man. And I'm going to be honest, I'm a little biased in this because I used to live in a town where gas stations did this and collude together. They've been investigated multiple times. I'm not going to give away the town name or whatever, but there's a small town in Arkansas that has this problem. We don't have a public option. I think that'd be a great solution. But man, I mean, yeah, this is socialism, but it's not. It doesn't betray capitalism. I think this is a great example of a public option. And if this doesn't make the case that there is a way to reform our healthcare system while not betraying the free market and also not betraying government's duty to its citizens and providing healthcare, then I think this is a great little microcosm of that argument.
Yeah, see, I love how you connected this to the meta argument, which if you wouldn't have done it, I would have. Connecting this to the public option when it comes to healthcare, or public option when it comes to anything. And when it comes to, public option versus a private option, the private option is always going to have more services, more frills, more things to justify that extra cost, which is why I say you can use that stuff to sort of to justify your extra costs in order to bring people over to your service. Hey, by the way, I've got all these extra awesome things if you come and do business with us. That's what a business is supposed to do to compete. Not sit there and collude with their buddies, with their other, with other companies and gas stations in the area to say, we're going to set this price artificially high and offer almost the exact same services so that we can all get rich. That's an example of crony capitalism, and that's exactly what we don't want. And so I think this public option is fantastic, whether it deals with healthcare or whether it deals with getting gas. Have a bare bones public option and allow people who want to spend more on the frills to be able to spend more on the frills, because that's really what capitalism is about. Competition.
Yeah. Except this isn't competition. The public gas station is not trying to make a. is not trying to make a profit. And in fact, the politicians are incentivized to undercut the gas prices to make people happy. So eventually, when this thing starts losing money, if it starts losing money, it hasn't yet, but it probably will. Politicians won't be incentivized to raise prices because they're politicians. So, like, you're undercutting all these privately owned gas stations that have, costs, and they have to make a profit in order to survive, basically to get votes. So it really is not a fair comparison.
Speculation, actually, a lot on your part.
There's no, it's not speculation. It's a legit problem. But what Sean's ignoring then is all you have to do, whenever you and on the local level, it would be very easy to do this, is include in the legislation that this project has to be revenue neutral in order to continue. Now that's tougher to do on the federal level. I'll certainly concede that. But yeah, like these are real problems Sean is bringing up, and this is where we differentiate, like, as liberals from a libertarian, is that libertarians live in this world of caricatures where the worst thing the government could do is the only thing the government can do, and they don't believe that we should even try to fix it, we should just throw it out, whereas liberals believe maybe the government has a role and we damn well better hold it accountable and make sure it's doing what the right thing is. And it's not competition, it's artificial competition in the terms of the selling of the gas. Sean's right. The public option will always be able to sell the product cheaper, but it's still fair competition overall because the private option is selling something, has something to offer that the public option doesn't have. And so for those people that can afford it and want it, and buy that marketing scheme, that's what they can go to.
And what I talked about the speculation is that he assumes, and this comes from an ideological standpoint, I know it does, is that they're going to lose money. It's no longer going to be efficient. It's not going to be revenue neutral because the government can't do anything right. And that's what I call speculation. Because
my point is to the incentives behind the two gas stations. If there's a shockwave in the oil supply for any reason, then in order to stay profitable, your private gas stations will have to raise prices. Like, that's just the way it has to be. But if I'm running for re-election and there's a shockwave, I don't want to be the politician who oversaw the raise in prices in the public gas station. So, like, my assumptions are logical, Mr.
No,
Mr.
because as long as it's cheaper, as long as it continues to be cheaper, even when you have to raise prices, because in order to remain revenue neutral, and look, it'd be a good idea to write something in a law to keep it revenue neutral, that it's not based on elections, it's not based on trying to run on it, it's based on what's good for the local economy and keeping this revenue neutral while still being able to compete with the other gas stations. And look, the whole entire purpose of this project is to bring down the artificially inflated prices, price gouging and collusion by the other gas stations around the area, into something that's more in line. And once again, if someone wants to get gas and get those other amenities that come with it, that private gas station, those private options are there, do like those frills, and I see there are people who do want those frills. When it comes to competing, you have to offer something that people want, and people want more, and will be able to invest and spend money on. And that's the spirit of competition, is being better than your competitor.
Yeah, and let me build on that, Jeff, because you're right. And I want to step back from the meta direction I took the conversation and bring it back to this particular point. Sean brought up a legitimate counterpoint there that if there's a spike in the or there's a dearth of fuel for some reason, an emergency happens, the public option would have would be at an unfair disadvantage. An unfair advantage, I should say. That's both a point for and a point against, because if it's an essential service, then it's probably a good thing to have that constant source of whatever it may be for people to go to. It's also a bad thing because that would probably run some of these people out of business. But to bring it back to this specific issue, Sean's argument holds no water, because most gas stations don't make money off gas. They make money off the knickknacks they sell. That's why this was a problem in this town, because all the other towns in the area or in the state or whatever that were too far for people to drive to were selling gas for like 10 to 20 cents cheaper, because they're all following the model that every other station in America follows, whereas this town got together and artificially inflated prices. So the answer to that is, like, they can keep the business model, keep their prices artificially inflated, and if there is some sort of emergency and gas prices shoot up $2 a gallon, they're going to shoot up $2 a gallon at the public place too. Like, so even though it'll still be cheaper, it'll still only be 10 cents cheaper. And so the profit margin is still there on all the knickknacks and whatnot at the other store. Gas is going to go up the same way if they follow the right, if they're not artificially inflating the prices, because they're both going to be selling gas for close to the same price.
Gas stations do make pennies for basically per gallon. They don't make that much per gallon. They actually make most of their money when you go in and buy stuff.
Yes.
But the thing that gets you in a gas station store is going to get gas at a gas station. Like,
maybe that's their problem with having to maybe push their wares a little bit better. Be creative. You're supposed to be competitive. Be competitive.
I'm just saying is, if there was collusion, which that's what they say, but I don't know if there is. I mean, it's not just increase in supply causes increase in price. Then whatever, but I don't live in this town, and I'm not a station owner. Like, and by the way, station owners are often franchise owners, which are small business owners, who are going to get a little burned by this. And if they are colluding, then I mean, sucks to be them at the moment. But like, I still don't like having something people can vote on to drive down prices. But then again, I'm not in Kentucky, so if they want to end up subsidizing gas, then go for it.
Surprisingly, Kentucky has actually done some fairly decent things. First with this small town, and then with also Connect, which is actually one of the better of the state-run healthcare exchanges. So you definitely have to give Kentucky credit on that. But then you could also take Kentucky credit away for continuing to elect Mitch McConnell. But that's it for another. That's a different segment for another day. Overall, I think.
And they did bring us fried chicken.
Government is playing true. Government, when it comes to the story, I think government is playing the role that it's supposed to do, stamping out people who are artificially inflating prices for their own gain by offering a competitive option. Definitely in favor of this.